The recon is successful. We're going to stop now. Was he able to get in? So the recon is successful. Sorrell and Smith find the unfinished railroad grade, as you can see on your map. It leads. You can see right beyond where the Confederates are going to deploy. The road veers. The unfinished railroad grade veers more to the south and east. Our road, the plank road, veers to the northeast. So they come back and tell General Lee and General Longstreet we see an opportunity. We see we can use the unfinished railroad grade. We will move we'll move cross country from Parker's store, turn our men into the unfinished railroad grade, which the Union are not apprised or not taking any heed of, and we will march east. And they will march east in column and then halt. The Union left flank, men of Mott's division, Brewster and McAllister's brigades are facing, in the woods, are facing west. They have no people deployed perpendicular to their line, just like the 11th Corps back on the 2nd day of May of '62. And the 3 brigades will be deployed. They just halt and they'll face to the left. They will be from right to left. Tyke Anderson, North Georgia. Then the brigade commanded by Billy Mahone, 5 Virginia regiments. Then the brigade commanded by William Wofford, 3 regiments and 2 legions. In support, Stone's brigade of Mississippians in support. Having deployed their men in that formation, they have now notified General Lee they're ready to advance. So the Confederate attack will be delivered from 2 directions, moving from south to north will be the 4,500 men in the 4 brigades. 3 of them in line of battle and 1 in support. From west to east will be the other units of Longstreet's command and Dick Anderson's. So they're going to hit the enemy from where they're not expecting, just like the previous year plus 4 days. The only warning the Union are going to have are frightened denizens of the woods, squirrels, foxes, and rabbits running toward them as the Confederate line advances northward, and as they try to reform to face south, panic begins to grip Union troops as they advance north with the 3 brigades, striking them in the flank. The first ones to collapse are McAllister and Brewster of Mott's brigade, and they begin rolling up the Union line that is facing west like you would roll up a wet carpet. Just like Gibbs has put down a linoleum in his kitchen and has attacked it down, and it's going to, as he gets up, it's going to roll up, and he's going to swear and unroll it again, and will do it again and not realize he has to tack it down.
I've been there, that's true.
And at the same time, the other Confederate troops are attacking from the west. So this is an open wood, and as they advance, the 12th Virginia of Mahone's brigade, in the smoke and dust and grime of battle, will cross this road. And they are now on the north side of the plank road. Now coming up to expedite the attack keep the momentum going will be the brigade of South Carolinians, Micah Jenkins. Now he is Longstreet's new protege. Longstreet is soured on Pickett, who at the time of Gettysburg and since the storming of Chapultepec Castle back in 1847 has been a Longstreet protege. Jenkins is from Edisto Island, South Carolina, a graduate of the Citadel. They're wearing gray uniforms with a distinct bluish cast. So we have Confederate soldiers of the 12th Virginia on that side of the road. We have the other Confederate brigades are on the south side of this road. There's big clouds of smoke coming up, and they're going to open fire. Broad daylight. The Confederates are going to open fire. Men of the Virginia Brigade are going to open fire, 12th Virginia, and a bullet is going to hit Jenkins in the temple, and Jenkins is dead when he hits the ground. In the center of the road is James Longstreet, and the bullet is going to come from the right. It's going to hit him in the right, under the right shoulder blade, and it's going to emerge from the area of below his Adam's apple. John Longstreet is a big fellow, like Gibbs, muscular like Gibbs, and it seems to lift him out of the saddle. That's how hard the impact with which he hits him. He regains his seat in the saddle, and men rush toward him. He is bleeding badly. Blood is frothing blood at the mouth. They're going to lead him back behind the lines, send for a stretcher, put him on the stretcher, and try to give him aid and comfort. The rumor, with the shooting down of Longstreet, the attack loses its impetus. And the Union troops are allowed to fall back all the way to the Brock Road, where we will make our last stop. So it seems that a critical moment in the battle, like it had 1 year and 4 months before, the god of battles has come down on the Union side. At a moment, Jackson, of course, was after, but this is in broad daylight. And this attack is far more devastating than Jackson's flank attack, because it's being delivered against the elite corps of the Union Army. So they will send for an ambulance. They'll carry Longstreet back a short distance. They put his hat over his face, and he hears people saying Longstreet is dead. And then he will take his left hand, and since his right arm is disabled, and he will pick up his hat by the brim, raise it up, ask one of his men for a lighted cigar, sticks it in his mouth, and will be carried back to Parker's store to a field hospital. It will take the Confederates about almost 4:30 to get reorganized. Now Lee is going to be both the commander of the army and Longstreet's corps, so he's going to wear two hats when he launches his final attack down here at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we will take our last walk of the day at the intersection. It will bring us out to the bus at the corner of the Brock Plank Road. Okay. General Hancock down at Todd's Tavern, and those people we have met up there along the Orange Turnpike. So here is General Harry Heaton, and I'm going to be here a couple of minutes ahead of him.
George Washington Jackson. Always George Washington Getty. AP Hill's advance has been delayed. It has been much more difficult than Ewell's up on the turnpike. But resistance is small. The only thing that is holding up the Confederates is one regiment of Union cavalry. James Harrison Wilson left nobody on the turnpike. He left one regiment here, as Ed has told us earlier, and has taken everybody else off to the south and into complete irrelevancy. So there is really nothing guarding the right flank of a Union army marching from north to south. And the Confederate idea of intercepting them and cutting their line of advance is very real and very palpable and comes very close to reality right here. Because as Harry Heath's infantry drives Hammond's cavalry, there is nothing that those New Yorkers can do to stop the Confederate juggernaut. As they advance to roughly where we are now, we are getting very close to the intersection with the Brock Road and the main north-south highway. And as Ed has intimated, that is my goal, that is my objective. If the Confederates can seize that spot, we have physically disconnected Grant from the far southern wing, the Second Corps. But as they close in on that intersection, the Confederates see a Union general and his staff and their headquarters flag, and they are issuing orders left and right. That makes the Confederates cautious. What is exactly in these woods that these generals would stand in the midst and give orders to? That causes them to pause and deploy their skirmishers and test these woods. That takes time. And that is time that George Washington Getty is going to exploit.
We have been ordered down here, so Sedgwick is going to do have an important role, but not personally, on the 5th. He's going to send one of his divisions, headed by George Washington Getty, down the Brock Road. His race is to get to the intersection of the Orange and the Orange Plank Road and the Brock Road. He and his staff are riding ahead in his headquarters guard. Lagging behind them are the 3 brigades of Lewis Grant. Lewis Grant, to let you know, we'll hear about them at Spotsylvania Courthouse. This brigade broke camp on the night of the 20th, of the 3rd and 4th, 2,400 strong. That is a big brigade. They've recruited heavily during the winter. It is the old brigade, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And the next day, they're going to lose 1,200 men in the fighting here. 1/2 of the men in a large brigade, or more than 1/17 of the Union troops that are going to be casualties here. So Getty will be there with Hazard Stevens, a short fellow, his chief of staff, and they and the staff dukes are holding that road for a few moments till Grant's brigade can arrive. They're going to later measure, since they're successful, and they're going to find dead Confederates within 30 yards of that intersection. That is about 40 yards closer to that intersection than our bus is. And Wheaton's brigade will take position in support of them. For the Washington people, that's who Wheaton, Maryland is named for. And on the north of the road will be Eustis's brigade. They've arrived here. They've caused, as Frank has said, we've caused the Confederates to pause and deploy. Now arriving are the 3 infantry brigades. And now it can be fairly even, because we are fighting the men of Harry Heath's brigade, division, 4 brigades. And we're going to hold this position, and the fighting is going on till 3:30. Because General Hancock, on the morning of the 5th, has left Chancellorsville Crossroads, moved by way of the Orange Plank Road to Alsop's, where he turned his men into the Catharpin Road, and by noon he has reached Todd Tavern, 4 miles from here. So Hancock is going to tell General Birney, these guys are former 3rd Corps people. They wear the diamond on their hat because they had to let them keep the old badges because they had mutiny. He says it's bad enough being put into the 2nd Corps and losing our identity, but we want to retain at least the red diamond as our Corps badge. So they're going to hasten up here, and Birney's division, and his division is going to deploy in support of Getty. Now among them arriving is Alex Hayes. Alex Hayes had commanded a division at Gettysburg. He's a West Pointer in 1844. Grant had been at West Point for 3 years with Alex Hayes, and he likes Alex, because Alex is big, and Grant was not a big cadet. And Alex will protect him from bullies like you. And so Grant has an affinity for Alex Hayes. So Alex Hayes is now down to a brigade commander. And Alex has a bad habit. He either can't hold his liquor or drinks a great deal of liquor. So Alex is going to deploy his men, as you can see on the map, north of the road. Is that Hayes? All right, there's Hayes. He's in support of Eustis and Wheaton. And Alex, they're going to advance. Now with Hayes getting here, with Birney getting here, the Yankees now have 2 divisions fighting 1 Confederate division. So that means that Hill is going to have to send up Marcellus Cadmus Wilcox's division. And that class of 46 from West Point, he writes probably one of the best of the contemporary histories of the Mexican War. He had been a brigade commander at Gettysburg, but now he leads the division that had been commanded earlier at Gettysburg by our good had been led at Gettysburg by Dick Anderson. Led by got a mental block now. He'd been in Anderson's division at Gettysburg, so he leads the division in the 3rd Corps. Wilcox is. So he has Wilcox. I like his name. You have to like these guys with classical names. Marcellus Cadmus Wilcox. I don't think he could do as good if his name was Brittany Tiffany Wilcox. And moves his men in. But now Alex Hayes is going to attack. Now the guys that came out of the 3rd Corps don't like Hayes. Hayes is a 2nd Corps man. If you remember, And there'll be two descriptions of what he does. He'd been earlier, and even the people that like him, back on 6th day of February, and he had been quite drunk in the fighting at the ford, one of the Rappahannock fords. Now, whether his canteen is full of whiskey or full of water, that will be in the eyes of a beholder. Men in the men who came out of the Second Corps are very proud of him, and they're going to say he is drawing his sword. And in the act of drawing his sword, a bullet is going to hit him in the temple. Now, a man from the 17th Maine, fortunately it's not Marty Gaines' great-grandfather, but a friend of his, that says what he does, he's brought his canteen up to his lips and is taking a swig, and he's already had too much, and gets his wrist tangled in the strap of the canteen as he's taking his drink when that bullet hits it. So you have two stories there, and he will be carried off. When he's shot, to show his affinity with Verdun sharpshooters, he is wearing a pair of the green breeches of the Verdun sharpshooters. So Grant will choke up when he learns from Horace Porter that his old friend Alex has died. The fighting will continue, and more Second Corps people are arriving. The division commanded by Gresham Mott and the division commanded by the division commanded by John Gibbon. Now, in Hancock's mind, Gibbon had not arrived with the additional celerity that he expected. So now the Union has 3 Second Corps divisions. They have 1 Sixth Corps division, and it's getting late in the day. Also coming down and threatening their flank, as you can see on the map, is General Wadsworth's division of the 5th Corps. So that now gives you 3 Second Corps divisions, 1 Sixth Corps division, 1 5th Corps division, and Barlow is beginning to arrive, and time is running out. In fact, as you're going to see on your map there, poor old Blackford with the 5th Alabama Sharpshooter Battalion is going to have to try to harass the advance of Wadsworth. So, as it gets dark, the Confederates are just barely hanging on. The Union has, and as we picked up where we talked when we were back on the Winnetaps field, the Confederates withdraw, don't entrench, scatter about, lie there where they are, willy-nilly, as Frank pointed out, like a Virginia worm fence. And the battle will begin the next day. But this will bring together a little continuity of what happened here on the afternoon of the 5th. This monument here is a new one. It was put up about 4 years ago. We came out here and drove a stake. Frank was out here that day with Howard Coffin, and we drove a stake after walking all over here. But I was out of town, so I didn't come down here and see with Frank and all the boys when they put the monument up here. Because of Frank Coffin, and because of Howard Coffin, and the interest of Senator Jeffords, who at this time was in purgatory in the Republican Party. He's responsible for a lot of good work with the Civil War battlefields dating from the time that he was in the United States Senate. In fact, he was one of the co-authors in the law that passes where Frank O'Reilly would love to go, but to be superintendent, though it's a can of worms, to be superintendent of the Chesapeake of the Shenandoah National Historical Park. And And a senator doesn't do what Jeffords did. He's drafting a bill affecting the state of Virginia, showing that Jeffords had more interested in protecting Virginia battlefields than the then senators from Virginia. So Vermont, I'm very delighted they have this monument. I know Frank he has to be down here all the time, loves it, and he likes this monument.
This is an outstanding monument. As far as modern monuments go, this is one of the very best I've ever seen. It's well thought out, it's well executed, it's beautiful, and it's brilliantly placed. It remarkably shows off how all of the fortunes of one afternoon can change so dramatically. From the Confederates going very much to the brink of victory, tantalizingly close to that intersection, and not being able to get there. George Washington Getty thwarts them when he throws his brigades into these woods. But we also have to think about the quality and caliber of those brigades. Washington Getty's men are going up against 4 brigades of Confederates, seasoned veterans. The men who are coming into these woods are 6th Corps guys who have very limited experience in many cases. And of those that are coming forward, we have some excellent officers in timber. Frank Wheaton is good. Lewis Grant is great. But Henry Eustis is not. And Henry Eustis is an abomination to the Federal High Command. Henry Eustis is much worse than General Hayes when it comes to tippling. He made his debut under Grant at a grand review in March, the highlight of which was when he fell off his horse and didn't know it. The 6th Corps commander was deeply chagrined, but rather than embarrass this man, they tried to create an intervention for this man. While he was a West Point graduate, he was a Harvard professor. A staff officer writing to Harvard professors said, "Your friend is having a difficult time in the field. Can you talk to him and encourage him and help him?" Is that a good idea? It's a horrible idea. The Harvard professors wrote to Henry Eustis saying, "What the hell is going on down there that all these people are slandering your name? They're calling you a lush." And he was so upset that he was not speaking to Sedgwick or Sedgwick's staff. In fact, he was contemplating putting out court-martial charges against Sedgwick's staff for slandering him. So where is he in the midst of all this action on May 5th? We don't really talk about him. We know where Hayes is because we watch him drink. He's near the troops. But Eustis drinks alone. So Eustis is not even as effective as Hayes. So when we think about 3 brigades against 4, really, we should think about 2 brigades against 4. So when the Vermonters stand on this hillock, this tiny little hill, they not only take it from the front, they take it from the flank. And they take it from Confederates moving through these bottoms and striking into their other flank. At one point, they said that it was a veritable hurricane of fire on this ridge. And they took devastating losses. How did they manage to survive it? Not Henry Eustis, but it's Winfield Scott Hancock. It will come up here in overwhelming numbers, as Ed has proved. And they will secure the spot, seal that intersection, and then take the battle to their enemy. And now the shoe is on the other foot. This spot was a last ditch, and now it is the jump start to take it to the enemy. All because Vermont gave them that chance. If they got pushed back into the intersection, where would Hancock deploy? How could he deploy? It is vital for that intersection that the Vermonters are up here.
Now remember, they have the jump start, and now This is going to now become very important. I believe, what was that earlier map, 8 or 10? The one that's going to be the last map? 10. So Lee has to do a jump start using Frank's simile, because he's got to reorganize Longstreet's command. Lee wants to try and seize the intersection. The Union has going to be granted, by the wounding of Longstreet, some 3 hours. And they're going to spend all that time entrenching their position and bringing in reinforcements. Because when we get there and the Confederates, when Lee gets the attack order, now remember, Lee is now wearing 2 hats. Commander of the Army of Northern Virginia and running Longstreet's and Hill's Corps in this area. So he has to get them organized. He's going to give the Federals a lot of time, but he's going to have something that makes the wilderness battlefield, arguably, because of his extension, the extension of the ground fires, one that will be a synonym for horror. Now, the ground fires will break out at Saunders Field, but even a larger group in this area. And the wind will be blowing from the west to the east. So that will be a benefit of to the Confederates, because the ground fires, of course, we have an understory in the wilderness of deciduous leaves, just like you see here, pine needles from the pine trees, and you fired the infantry. Almost all are armed with muzzle-loading weapons. So when you load the muzzle-loading weapon, you have to bring the projectile from your cap pouch up to your mouth. And strange to say, the Army is still, in the Marine Corps in 1941, are still requiring a man to have his canine teeth on the right side of his face. Why? That's where you're right-handed. You have to bring the projectile wrapped in the heavy paper. You bring it up to your mouth and tear it open. And you then pour the powder as the muzzle is elevated. You then, after the powder is poured in, you make the wad out of the paper. You drop it down. You then drop the mini ball down. Use your ramrod to seat it, and then you fire it. Now, with the leaves, the dry leaves, the wind right, it will fall in the dry leaves. They will then, a number of them will start smoldering and then burning. And of course, you're shot, this young fellow here, this drummer boy is shot in both legs. And he can't move his legs. And the fire is burning towards you. And you still have that cartridge box and that cap pouch on your belt. And you have about 25 rounds in the box. And the fire is going to get to you, and then it's going to start scorching your clothes, and then set them afire, and it's going to reach that cartridge box, and it's going to be like a string of cherry bombs, not ladyfingers, going off as they explode. And that is going against blowing that way. So this is probably the most extensive battle in the Civil War, in which you have extensive ground fires that are moving, and the Confederates of Bratton's brigade, Bratton having automatically replaced his commanding officer, Jenkins, will, as we're going to talk about, he's going to be Colonel Bratton, and he's going to get his men up on the Yankee breastworks as we advance, and it's going to be teetering in the balance. Anything to say before we step off?
I'm good, sir.
Okay, we've got struck. So thanks to what is happening here, Richmond Battlefield, Antietam, Gettysburg, people are getting out and prove that yes, people will get out of their cars, get off of their dump, get off and walk the battlefield. Now we're going to turn it over to General Lee, since this is his attack, and I will, I guess, be Winfield Scott Hancock. My task is easier one, yet to defend. Because I've had 3 hours to bring in a reinforcement, and I've had 3 hours to show up breastworks like you saw in that drawing. So our position in the last 3 hours has become, we've gotten reinforcements, we've reorganized, and we have breastworks here. So we'll turn it over to General Lee.
We're 48 hours into combat. We're into our second day on campaign. And Robert E. Lee is not only the commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, he is a wing commander and the de facto commander of the Confederate First Corps. He's already wearing 3 hats in the first 48 hours. That is a rather bad harbinger. Longstreet's flank attack created opportunity, but it was an opportunity that went unexploited because of the chaos that ensued. The Confederates coming from the south, roiling through the woods to get to the highway, to encounter Confederates coming down the highway. They paralyzed their own good fortune. It takes 3 hours for Lee to assert himself as an Army commander, as a wing commander, and as a Corps commander, to get these troops back into a position where they can launch another offensive strike. If you look at map number 10, you will see a rather troubling looking map. You will see a general assault that has 3 great big blocks on it. The blocks are Field, Kershaw, and Anderson. That should tell you right now things are not good. Because we are talking about division blocks. When do we look at maps that have just divisions? We don't even know the alignment of the brigades, or the regiments. There is still a huge element of chaos ensuing here. Nonetheless, Lee is going to will these troops forward into an attack that involves 3 major blocks. Field, Kershaw, Anderson. 3 divisions. That is a corps in strength. A general assault by a corps. When was the last time we saw the Army of Northern Virginia launch an attack of that magnitude? July 2nd, 1863. Interesting that nobody said July 3rd. So think about the dramatic vastness of this. How big those assaults are at Gettysburg. Done across open, rolling countryside. Think about translating that into this swamp and marsh and woods. That should tell us how very seriously he is, how very desperately he is to achieve victory. The only way that he can win is if he can seize this intersection and cut this north-south highway, the only exit route from the wilderness leading south. So at this moment, the turnpike is immaterial. Gordon's flank attack is immaterial. The decisive spot is here. This is the make or break. So when Gordon makes his attack, he attacks with 2 brigades. When Lee attacks, he attacks with 3 divisions. This is the emphasis. Don't let Gordon fool you. So, the attack goes forward. As these men roll forward on either side of the plank road, driving along the axis of that as their directional marker, they come up against the intense fire of the Second Corps. They're held at bay across most of the front, primarily because the Confederates are weakened and disorganized and have new leadership. But in this one case, new leadership will be the driving force, because we're going to have South Carolinians under John Bratton driving home an attack. Their commander, Micah Jenkins, is dead. The second Confederate general to be killed on this battlefield. And Bratton will be the driving force. As his men come forward, they meet the same devastating fire everybody else does. It also ignites the leaves underfoot, like everyone else does. But remember which way the wind blows. Ed told us. It blows from the west to the east. It blows away from the Confederates and towards the Union defenders. It comes close to their earthworks, their log earthworks. And the logs ignite. Part of the earthworks go up in flame, and as the Federals abandon their works, show a moment of weakness, a spot to exploit, the South Carolinians go right through the flames. They jump through the burning log works and seize the line and seize the road. They have achieved their objective. They have broken the road physically. They are there. But that is only half a story. It is the story that we've seen repeatedly, whether it's George Meade at Fredericksburg or George Pickett at Gettysburg. Getting there is not the trick. Staying there is the trick. Bratton has reached the road. Bratton has reached the road. We have 3 divisions, and 1 brigade makes it. They're isolated against the entire Union Second Corps, which realizes as well as anybody that this is a life and death situation. This is the difference between victory and defeat. Bratton is on the wrong side of the earthworks, and he is on the wrong side of the fire when the Federals react. I should have warned you that we are now in one of the most remote hinterlands of Virginia. It is an area that is largely inhabited by the crimson-naped denizens of the wilderness, who often feel a necessity to show their kindness by giving you a salutation along the way. So take it all in the good spirit that it's given. If nothing else, what you've just achieved for that poor little crimson-naped fella is that maybe for the first time he's actually had to look at this battlefield.
So, they have reached there, but we have cannon positioned in our works. The Confederates are not using cannon, and we have reserves. We have Alex Webb's brigade. Alex had been a hero at Gettysburg because his has been one of the brigades that will be at the angle. We even have a brigade of the 9th Corps down here, Leisure's brigade. We have lots of reserves. And only this one brigade of South Carolinians has reached the breastworks, planted their colors on it as you saw in that drawing, and has crossed the earthworks. The fires are behind them, the enemy is in front of them, the enemy outnumbers them, and the Confederates are going to be repulsed. Now what Lee has to do, we picked him up at our last stop before we went to lunch. He will then hasten over, still looking for an opportunity, but the day is getting late. It is beginning to beginning, and he doesn't have Joshua on his side to command the sun to stand still. So Lee will reach up there, will hurry up to where we were, north of Sanders Field, and he will be there to authorize the Gordon attack, to take actions to ensure the Gordon attack takes place. But it is too late in the day. Gordon will capture 600 men, 2 Union general officers, force the Union to pull back their right, but, as Frank has pointed out, when they stop Lee's attack here, the chances of the Confederates getting an overwhelming victory have now slipped by, and the arguably, in many ways, the most terrible day of fighting in Grant's Overland Campaign, 2 days, with the heaviest casualties during that 2 days of any of the 2 days in the Overland Campaign, in which the Union will lose in excess of 17,000 men, the Confederates in excess of 8,000. The Union Army has taken losses that, if the Confederates can continue inflict them on them, unfortunately they will not do it at Spotsylvania. They will do it at Cold Harbor, and then they will do it at Petersburg. At Petersburg on the 18th we will find out that the veterans of the Union Army have broken. When they're ordered to advance on June 18th to Petersburg, everybody but the heavy artillerists hugged Mother Earth. Fire in the air, but the Army, by the evening of the 18th, the Army of the Potomac, except for the heavy artillerists, are not going forward. So Lee has worn them down, but they're in front of Petersburg, and after the 18th is rather significant. After the 18th day of June, the Federals will not attack earthworks again, except at the crater on July 30th, and that is a kind of an aberration, because Lee is going to maneuver, Grant is going to maneuver toward the flank and draw the Confederate army out to protect their lines of supply. So Grant's, by the time they reach Petersburg, and on the 18th, the campaign of attrition looks like it may be failing. In fact, when we go, and I'm going to speak on it tonight, by the 24th day of August, Lincoln is of the opinion he's going to lose the election. That's what is, this sets the stage for it because of the heavy casualties, the veteran officers and NCOs, and they're not replacing them with qualified, but Lee can't replace his either. Lee may be losing 30,000 when the Federals lose 65,000, but the Federals may not replace theirs in quality people, but they can replace them in bodies. We have about 5 minutes before we have to move back. Any questions? Particularly as you walk back to the bus, note the